G'day guys, Googs here. Today I'm going to talk about the music industry. The reason being, I don't think I've necessarily made a specific video on music before, but I'm a huge fan of music. To play it, to listen to it, to understand it, to learn it, the history of it. I'm a huge fan of music. It's my favourite art form out of all the other art forms we've ever come up with. And there's nothing against pictorial art or anything like that, cinematography or whatever, that's fine. It's a great art form. Martial arts, cool. My thing is music, always has been. And this week we've got, yet again, another example of how bad the industry can be to an artist. Now, in this case, it's Taylor Swift. Now, I'm not a big Taylor Swift fan. I like the metal. However, it transpires that her first 3 albums, she owns no rights to that music. In other words, it's owned by someone else. Okay, which means that she can't play that music anymore without paying royalties to the people who own it. And that's a terrible situation. And there's a lot of people coming out who aren't aware of the music industry over the years, or maybe have forgotten. But that is one case, or the latest case, out of a long history. For example, Elvis didn't own his own music. A lot of people didn't know that. It was owned, of course, by the Colonel, who was his manager. So, of course, the Colonel was going to let him play because he was a manager. He got a percentage anyway of Elvis Presley's movies, Elvis Presley's albums, and, of course, his live performances, and did pretty well after the unfortunate, untimely death of Elvis Presley. Once again, I'm not much of an Elvis Presley fan. However, I acknowledge and recognise the great things that man did. Now, back to Taylor Swift. So she can't play any songs off the first 3 albums. I think she's got like 6 or 7 now. And of course she's upset. And I don't blame her for being upset. She wrote the lyrics to these songs. She sang these songs. These are her songs. They're her babies. But once again, it's the way the system is set up. Okay, the legal system around IP and copyright, okay, is in desperate need, and has been for about half a century at least, in desperate need of being cleaned up, because there are many recording artists out there, new and old, that have ended up trapped in this cycle. Or will sign you to this record label, and just sign this, and this. And of course, you're a young kid, you haven't got a lawyer, you don't understand how the industry works, because you're young, you're new to the system, and you sign away your rights. You know, you get a record deal for 3 albums, and that record deal is owned by your producer, or your songs are then owned by your producer, or whoever it is, you know, your manager, whatever. You know, it's sad. And it's sad because that's your art. It's not a matter of people go, oh, well, you just don't play the first 3 albums. It's like, yeah, but it's bigger than that. It's your art, it's your expression. And even if you don't believe in the lyrics anymore, you still wrote them and you believed in them at the time. They're like snapshots, they're like photographs of where you used to be, okay? And it's sad that Taylor can't do this. The worst case, though, I've ever seen of this kind of copyright claim would be John Fogerty from CCR. When CCR wrote all their songs, it was a 4-way split between the 4 members of the band to own the rights to the songs, to own the rights to the music. Now, when the band broke up, there was an agreement, a gentleman's agreement from the interviews I've heard with John Fogerty. There was a gentleman's agreement between all 4 members of the band that they wouldn't sell their share of the music unless they had permission from the other 3 members. 2 of them just went behind John Fogerty's back and went, we're going to sell it to this record company. I think it was RCA. It's MCA, it's now RCA. And which is a subsidiary of Columbia. And John, basically, then that company owns half the rights to all the music, and demanded if John Fogerty or the other member played the songs live, that they had to pay royalties. And John Fogerty hasn't played any CCR since the early 70s because of this, right? So it isn't just Taylor Swift. In fact, the industry is set up this way. People don't realise why, say, Guy Sebastian doesn't come out and sing songs off his first album. Same reason. Okay? That was one of these X Factors or something like that, which are a trap. If you're a young person wanting to go into the music industry, You're the Voice, X Factor, any of these shows, do not go there. Do not go there. They will own you while you're on the show. You make an album, they will own that. Right, your music. If you're an original artist and you write a great new album and you put it out there, they'll say, oh yeah, we'll get you with a deal, blah, 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 blah. Part of that deal will be you don't own the rights to your music. It's a trap. If you're young and you're enthusiastic about your music, if you're a rock band, for example, go out touring, move cities if you have to, find your place in the sun. There's plenty of stories of bands doing that. For example, Metallica moved from Los Angeles, which at the time was all hair metal, Motley Crue and guys like that, moved down to San Francisco where the heavy metal scene was a bit heavy, Anthrax, Exodus, Slayer, I think at the time. I may be wrong about Slayer being there at the time. But all these, early thrash bands, and they ended up getting a record deal through Metal Blade Records, Johnny Zazula. And so, you can make it. I'm not saying you will, because the music industry is not, let me repeat, not about the best musicians. And it isn't about the most talented people. It's about what's saleable. It's about the money. So if they don't think you've got a product that they can sell, chances are you're not going to get anywhere. It's a bit sad when you think about modern era and the way the record industry is run. You'd never get a band like Loverboy, for example, getting a deal because they didn't have the look, if you know what I mean. These days you've got to have the look. You've got you can't. It's style over substance, right? And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate, and you see these young people. For example, Katy Perry, who they got her assets in the foreground for the first couple of albums, and it drove her nuts. I mean, look at Katy now; she's all over the place, and it's unfortunate. It's terrible the way that they drive you through this system. It's worse than South Korea, mind you. It's terrifying over there. If you ever want to look into K-pop and how those groups form, man, it's a scary world in K-pop. I grab these kids in big auditions when they're like 13 or 14 and basically put them into a concentration camp. I will go that far. For 4 or 5 years, and then whoever's left over that they think is saleable, then especially with the young women, they'll say, well, you need to go get plastic surgery. Your look isn't quite right. You need to go do this, you need to go do that. Even the young men, they make them up and doll them up and basically say, well, now you're going to sing this, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. It's horrific. It's horrific the way they treat those pop stars. So if you're into K-pop, look into how they do their boot camps, or as I like to call them, concentration camps, because they're horrific. They really are. The record industry is about money. It's about saleability, man. And, unless you're in a new genre of music that they're not quite sure what to do with yet, like, say, heavy metal back in the 70s and 80s, I'm not talking hair metal like, the popular bands like Motley Crue and Poison and Kiss and bands like that. I'm talking about, your Metallicas, your Black Sabbaths and, Iron Maidens and bands that were a little risque for the time. Because there was such a niche, record companies formed around the scene. It doesn't happen anymore. Music is written by maybe half a dozen people around the world. You've got your big name producers like will.i.am and people like that. It's manufactured music now, and it's a shame. And it's a shame that Taylor Swift has lost her first 3 albums of music at this point. Mind you, she's a big superstar, and I'm sure if she dropped enough money, they would let her have her music back. But it's just a shame that this is the way the recording industry works. And, well, let's not go into the Kesha thing. The casting couch is real in the music industry as well. It's a terrible system. And unfortunately, just like the movie industry where the Me Too movement started, and should have kept going, by the way, Hollywood needs a big clean out. And the same should happen with the recording industry. It needs a big clean out because there are too many people with too much power to decide the fate of young people who have got that much talent. It isn't funny. I'm Nathan Gooks Fletcher. This is my drunk philosophy. And I'll catch you good people down the road. Uru. Be good.